I just started it. Say I was too.
It just went off 2 seconds ago, but it's not like an automatic timer.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not the only one. Oh, is it better? Okay. Everybody's watching from home, kidding? They got the popcorn and everything. Well, that too.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 57th and final candidate forum. My name is Ed Steinfeld with the Voice of Laguna. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce, along with the Laguna Board of Realtors, for putting tonight's forum on. We have 4 contestants. Let's give them all a big hand right now. It really is something to want to run for office and want to serve your community. So I hold them all in the highest respect for doing that. And we should all as well, each and every one of them. So soon we're going to be introducing the candidates one at a time. We ask you to hold your applause until they've all been introduced. And needless to say, booing a candidate is not allowed. That's the reason we have security here. Paul Hornbuckle used to work the door at the Riviera in Las Vegas. So after introductions, each candidate is going to have the opportunity for a 2-minute opening statement. And for the rest of us, that's a listening session. We ask you to hold your applause until they've all had a chance to speak. The forum is going to be an exchange of ideas and opinions among the candidates. And once the questions get started, it's our responsibility to observe, and we thank you for not involving yourselves in the conversation. There are 2 incumbents who have records, and we will ask them to defend those records, as well as asking them questions about the future. The candidates are going to get 2 minutes to respond to questions that are directly put to them, and each of the other candidates will get anywhere from 30 seconds to 60 to 2 minutes to respond, and that time will be at my discretion. Halfway through, somewhere about 9 o'clock, we're going to take halfway through, we'll take a 10-minute break. If the candidates need to break again at any time before or after that, absolutely, we're okay. Just let me know, raise your hand. And at the end of the round of questions, the candidates will each give a 2-minute closing statement. And once again, we ask you to hold your applause until each of them has had a chance to speak, okay? Thank you again, all of you, for being here and for being concerned enough about this community to take the time to be here tonight. And to those of you on Facebook Live, thank you as well. Those of you on Cox Channel 852, thank you again. So first up, we're going to go in alphabetical order. And first up for the opening statement will be Hallie Jones.
All right. Thank you guys all so much for being here. I know for some of you this might be the first forum that you've seen. For those of us up here, we do feel like it's about the 157. So we are definitely nearing the finish line, and I am grateful that you guys are here and engaged and excited about the future of our community. My name is Hallie Jones. I'm a Laguna local, born and raised. Had the incredible privilege of leading Laguna Canyon Foundation as executive director for 10 years before moving over to Crystal Cove Conservancy about a year ago. My experience is in marine conservation and land conservation, but I have to say the thing that I'm most excited about bringing to the council, should I be lucky enough to be elected, is a true sense of collaboration and teamwork and productive problem solving, really productive debate and dialogue. I think that's one of my strongest skills and something I'm excited to share with this community. Thank you.
Next up is Judy Mancuso.
See, okay, hi everybody. I kind of hate going into my regular spiel because I feel like everybody's already heard it, but for those of you that haven't, I'm Judy Mancuso. I've lived here 30 years, and the first 20 years of my career, I was in information technology, working for companies like Toshiba and E-Trade, doing big systems development projects and being a project leader, systems development manager, so overseeing large teams of engineers, database designers. So my background is in analyzing things, finding solutions, and working within very large teams and leading them. And then after that, in 2007, I founded my nonprofit, Social Compassion and Legislation, where I've worked for 17 years on legislation at the state level. I did do a bill in the state of New York as well and got that passed and signed into law. But in California, my group has sponsored 70 bills, and what that means is you come up with an idea, you have to get a legislator to carry it for you, and then you help shepherd it through to the end and to get a signature from the governor. And so as of the close of this legislative session, we have 27 bills signed into law, and that was from 3 governors, from Schwarzenegger to Brown to Newsom. So the reason I'm running is because I have this very unique experience with my information technology background, 17 years solid political experience, and living here 30 years makes me more than qualified for this position. So here I am. Thank you, and please vote for me.
Thank you, Ms. Mancuso. Next up is Mr. George Weiss.
Thank you. I'm an incumbent. I think you all probably know me. I want to thank the Chamber for hosting the forum, and also my fellow candidates here. I think they've been a very collegial group, and we've actually had some fun doing this, and it was stressful at times, and we're glad it's over, of course, but I want to thank them for their civility and their cooperation. And I've also been impressed with the Chamber's work, especially with the hotels and hospitality industry. I think that's a sector that we can be proud of. It's doing extremely well, and appreciate the Chamber's work in that regard. I also think I voted as Bob did against the TOT, raising the TOT tax. I thought it was not a good idea, since that group brings in about $20 million a year into the city's coffers, and doesn't really impact our environment or our town the way day trippers do. So I voted against it. And let's see. Some city council members were in favor of it and certainly come back. But hospitality industry is not the cause of that massive tourist we saw on the 4th of July, so we need to be careful about which class of visitors we're talking about. And we still should try to tax the day trippers. Hospitality sector is a huge asset to Laguna, and the money brought in, as I mentioned, is significant. So I'll talk about my record, what I want to do as the forum goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Next up is Bob Whaley.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here and speak with all of you. I'm sure we're going to cover a lot of topics tonight. I think most of you probably know me as well. I've been engaged in public service in Laguna Beach for a long time. on the council, on the planning commission, on the school board. And, you know, it's something that's really been very rewarding for me. And I work hard at it, enjoy it, want to continue doing it. You know, I think being on the council is a tremendous responsibility. And it means, you know, there's a lot of issues that come up. You know, we'll talk about a lot of issues tonight here that won't, and you know, I guarantee you, in the course of the next 4 years, issues that will be dealt with won't be spoken about tonight because things come up. And, you know, so I kind of think about two things here. One, my record, and two, you know, what I still want to accomplish moving forward. And on the record, you know, I've always been somebody who wants to do things and get things done, and I think we've accomplished a lot. And when you talk about, you know, I think back to when I first got on council, I initiated the update to the downtown specific plan, and we worked, you know, up and on with the chamber on a number of aspects of that, you know, to get better conditions for businesses moving into town, make it easier for them to open a small business here in the community. You know, we've had issues that have come up where council has had to show leadership. We had like measures Q, R, and S that were all brought before the voters. That I opposed all three of those. Unfortunately, all three of those lost because I think they would have had a significantly adverse effect on our community and the business community. You know, going forward, I think there's a lot to be done still in terms of our land use planning. We've got to address affordable housing. We've got to look at phase 2 of the downtown specific plan. We've still got to find some opportunities for added parking. I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. And we've got sort of a big environmental push that's going on, that some of which is mandated by the state of California, some of which is initiated here locally. That's going to be, I think, exciting to work on in terms of electrifying our fleet and, you know, doing a bunch of microgrids on some of our facilities here. So, you know, lots of things to work on that'll be, I think, exciting for council members and the community as we move ahead. So look forward to our discussion tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Ladies and gentlemen, your 4 candidates. Our first few questions are directed at all of you, and we'll go from left to right, starting with Mr. Whalen. The Prop 33, which is the ballot initiative on residential rent control. If Prop 33 passes, the city can, in theory, make some headway on affordable housing. How do each of you see utilizing its passage as a practical tool for the city, and what variables do you use to mandate limits on residential rents? Mr. Whalen, we'll start with you.
Well, Prop 33 would repeal the Costa-Hawkins Act, which is a statewide act, and which currently prohibits, you know, local governments from imposing rent control on units that were built after 1995. So if it passes, then local governments can impose rent controls, whatever they think is appropriate for their community. I personally question whether this initiative is the right way to address rent control in the state. I think just pulling all the guardrails off and letting you know, hundreds of communities try to figure out what they're going to do with affordable with rent control is not the right way to go. I think that the legislature should amend the Costa-Hawkins bill and allow for rent control, but within, you know, certain guidelines that you know, make sense across the board. So I'm not thinking that that's a good proposition to support this year, and we'll see how it comes out. I mean, if it does pass, then, you know, we'll have a debate as to whether controlling rents is the right way to go here or not. I think a better way to go is to look for opportunities to add projects, you know, new units that agree through the construction process or the renovation process to impose, you know, to set income limits and rent limits. And that's something the city can incentivize without imposing rent control on everybody in town who may own a couple of units. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Ms. Jones, do you agree with that? And if so, what kind of imposing of those rates would you do?
I do agree with that. I think, in concept, we're not gonna solve the affordable housing. Truly, it's a crisis in this state. We're not gonna solve it through, one way, right? We need to be looking at multiple avenues to provide more affordable housing, particularly in this community. And I don't like the idea of taking those guardrails off. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I do think that we need to look particularly at our ADUs and the number of ADUs we have in this community. Are those being used the way that we really intended them to be used, to add to our affordable housing stock or not? And how can we incentivize our homeowners, our business owners, our property owners to provide infill development and redevelopment affordable housing options? I think that's a better choice.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weiss?
Yeah, thank you. I've been an affordable housing advocate since I was on the Housing and Services Committee in 2015. We've been losing affordable housing. What happens here is that it gets upgraded, it gets renovated, and it double the rents, and people move out of town. That's their only place to go. And we've lost a number of people because of high rents. 32% of the population in Laguna rents. So it's an important segment. It's an important segment for people who work here as well to have affordable housing and not come in town every day from another city to work here. So we have to go at it. We have to go at it smartly, as well. And I believe we don't have the funding for affordable housing locally yet, the mechanism in place to create it. And also to purchase affordable housing that's already here. That's a lot, and we need to maintain it because these are people who are our neighbors, who work at the stores, who work at retail and hospitality for that matter. So I think we owe it to them to get on the path. And I disagree that having the state control is just a good idea. We always have believed in local control, and all of a sudden we don't. We have local control. We can tailor this to conditions on the ground in Laguna Beach.
What mechanisms would you use?
Well, that's a difficult question to ask because I'm not an economist. I think you look at a percentage of each case has to be different because you're going to get people who make more money and live in a place that's not affordable. The place that is affordable is Laguna Beach, right here in the corner of Glen Eyrie, right? And Shane Stable happens to live there, which is great. But that guy has kept that affordable for many years. The guy that works at Ganal lives there and has lived there for 30 years, John. So I think the question of a mechanism is difficult to come up with, and I haven't come up with that today because it's more of an analyst decision. But I think we do need to look at, I'm not saying we should do rent control, but I think it's one of the tools that we should have, for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Ms. Mancuso?
Well, my friend Bob Hartman has talked my ear off about Prop 33, and I'll be honest, I haven't read all the propositions yet. But 33, we did have a conversation, and he said the unintended consequences were really pretty striking. And so with the arguments he made, I am voting against it along with him, but as I told you in my opening statement, I have been working on state legislation for 17 years, and before that I was working on local ordinances, mostly with the city of Los Angeles. And the reason why I partnered with the city of LA is because they're the second largest city in the United States. And so it made a huge impact. So we can look at this if this is an issue, one of the many issues with housing in Laguna Beach, and we can address it in a way that is appropriate here in Laguna Beach. If a statewide bill comes up that we need to lobby, I have that significant experience that I can be helpful, and that's pretty much how I feel.
Okay, so you're waiting on the statewide bill to come up to lobby?
I mean, we could start one ourselves if this is a big issue in Laguna Beach and we want to get an author and run a bill like Bob was saying. Bob says, well, I don't like this version. Okay, so let's say it gets voted down, we could run our own bill, whatever version that is, if we can't solve it at a local level.
Okay, thank you very much. As we all know, businesses shudder for various reasons, whether it's a poorly managed concept, poorly planned concept, poor execution, incompetent management, or excessive rent. Yesterday, we just saw Wild Taco close. They were at $17,500 a month for their rent. The city can't affect the first three, but it does have a responsibility to attract and maintain a thriving business community. Prop 33 obviously does not apply to business rents. My question is, should there be something that does apply to business rents? And in the absence of a rent control, what will each of you do to address these high rents with business property owners? And would a vacancy tax be an effective tool, or would it discourage potential building owners from purchasing here in Laguna Beach? We'll start with Mr. Whalen.
Well, I think high rents are an issue in terms of the community, and we have, owners, some owners, frankly, they are not incentivized to even occupy their buildings. I mean, Laguna Drug, which has been closed for a very, very long time now, used to be Sprouts Ritz. I mean, I think that building has been closed more than it's been opened in the 40 years I've been here. Vacant. So, I mean, that's not a good thing. But, that is that's the private market, and that's, market rents are driven by supply and demand. And, if there are businesses that are willing to come and open up, they'll come and open up. I don't know as though there's a lot we can do to adjust private rents. Buildings are valued at what they're valued at, and the owners are going to take the rents that they can get. So I think it's more that we should make a bigger effort to get businesses attracted here, businesses that can be successful, and businesses that perhaps have the staying power to support these kind of rents. But in terms of a vacancy tax, I'm not sure I'm convinced on that either. I think it's more incentivizing businesses to come here than penalizing property owners in some way with a new tax or a...
Even if their building has been empty for 5 years, maybe like the dry cleaner on Ocean.
Maybe there's a point, but the dry cleaner on Ocean, we've just approved a transaction with Rivian, right? So they're going to start utilizing that space. So, if you bring in successful businesses, right, then things start to happen around them too. So I'm not sold on a vacancy tax.
Okay. So dovetailing off of what Mr. Whalen said, several years ago with a different council, Subway wanted to move into where that hot dog place just failed. Howie, would you allow or open up to corporations coming to the town?
I don't like the idea of this town becoming overrun by chains. I would say that probably most of us in this room agree with that. Is there room for a little bit of flexibility there? I think that there is, if we can do so fairly and equitably. I think more importantly, we need to be really strategic about the businesses that we want to have in this town, the businesses we want to keep in this town, and we can be really strategic about attracting those businesses, making it easier for businesses to open up and run themselves. I agree with Bob that, I'm not sure how much influence the city can have over high rents, high commercial rents, but I think it's a huge issue to have these vacant storefronts. And I think that the way that we as a city can address that is working with property owners, but perhaps there is the potential if a property has been vacant for a long time, that there is some sort of penalty or tax associated with that. But let's incentivize these property owners to get businesses into their storefronts. Let's be really strategic about recruiting the businesses we want to see in this town. Let's go out and find them and talk to them. And let's make it easier for businesses to open up.
Okay. And Mr. Weiss, how would, dovetailing off of what she said, how can we incentivize that?
I don't see there's much incentive. Here's what we need to do. We don't know where all the retail sales come from by sector. we should have the metadata for all retail in this town and understand what is being purchased and by whom, not necessarily by individual, but by zip code and what that is and what price it is. We don't have any of that. Are 7, tattoo parlors enough? I don't think so. I think they are. I think that 7 or 8 is enough. So we have no controls over it now. It's sort of everything's by right. You can compete with a jewelry store, and the jewelry store is next to you. You have another jewelry store, and then one after that. We can't stop that. I think that's a mistake in the plan that we had approved by council, which I didn't approve. But what we can do, the vacancy tax, I don't see any wrong taxing someone who's left their storefront closed for a year because they're a trust fund person and doesn't need the revenue. Yeah, write it out for something local to the community. I don't really care as much what it is as long as it fits in. I don't want too many candy stores, I suppose, or tattoo parlors. So that's something we should do.
How would you gauge that tax? What kind of math would you do to present a tax to a building owner?
I think we'd have to look at models that are being done by other cities already. They're out there. And that this is a common thing because Amazon and the other big box retailers have gone to the internet in 5 or 6 years. When I joined the council, I think it was 37%, 10% of all retail was internet. And 37% of that internet retail sales is from Amazon. So, a big chunk, and everybody's learned that lesson. Macy's and all the other box stores, Walmart's the second biggest one. So that's not going to go away. And that's a sea change in the market conditions that we can't stop. We can accommodate it by using those stores for other things, and they were originally. South Spectrum was a home for somebody, and so were one of the galleries that are around town. People lived there. You could do that as well. In some cases, we can't do it in all cases. But I don't think we can incentivize. I don't want to see more fast foods change in town necessarily. There are chains. The hot dog place didn't make it. The Vienna beef red hots are pretty darn good.
Ms. Mancuso?
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, the 17,000 a month, we can't control that. What owners are gonna charge is what they're gonna charge. One of the problems I do think we have with the restaurants, say Wild Taco or others, is they're not offering a menu that everybody likes. I mean, I have a very hard time eating in Laguna Beach, a very hard time, and I'm not the only one. So that is an issue.
So how would you incentivize a vegan restaurant to open up for $17,000?
I mean, that's a tough one. I think that you can incentivize people to have plant-based menu options, and we wanted to do that with our environmental sustainability committee, and then all of a sudden you're opening up to a whole new market. I mean, people like me travel to other cities to eat at vegan restaurants, so we could have that here. I think we have to change these businesses to mixed use. I think we need them for housing. I have talked to several council members, mayors, mayor pro tems of a lot of cities in California, and people are just giving up on retail. Retail is, going by the wayside. It is about ordering things online. Will there always be retail? Of course. But it has changed so much that we do need to look at the mixed use and turning them into residential. I'm not for a vacancy tax because I feel the property taxes are so high that it's enough just to get your property tax paid. And I also would want to work with the owners in trying to attract the businesses that we need. I would love to see a Trader Joe's where Gelson's was, and I would be out there lobbying for that big time because we need affordable groceries here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just last Thursday, Newport Beach started enforcing a no camping ordinance, no sleeping on sidewalks or benches or anywhere in public view. Santa Ana's encampments are being broken up along with Long Beach, and we know Los Angeles as well. And here in town, in not only the last several days, but really the last several months, we've seen a steady increase of new faces, new homeless faces in the downtown. Could you see Laguna Beach enacting a similar ordinance? And if so, how would you enact that? Mr. Weiss, let's start with you.
I don't know the Newport Beach ordinance is. The anti-camping, I'm sorry, you really, I don't know if I agree with the U.S. ruling on this, because the Idaho ruling was that you can't stop people from sleeping. They have to sleep somewhere, and where are they going to sleep? We have the Centering Canyon. That's got 42 beds, but you're laying on the ground in a mat, mixed sexes. It's the last resort, and a lot of people don't want to sleep there. So I'm not for kicking out people on public spaces at this point to move them in another direction, like south of here. I just think it's inhumane.
What would you do to address the influx of new homeless?
Well, I think we've done a good job. The Friendship Shelter's done an amazing job of placing people in housing, and that's the only way people can get help. You can't get help by meeting them at Main Beach and talking to them every week on a Thursday, asking them what's up, did you find a job yet? It just doesn't work. You need to put them into housing first, and that's the federal government's program too, housing first. So they're doing a good job of doing it. I haven't seen the influx you're talking about, Ed. I'd have to see the numbers.
I'm there every day. I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you see it. I don't see it. I'm at Main Beach.
I haven't seen you downtown recently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many new faces you've seen. Observational data is good. But your thing, they're coming from Newport. I have no idea how many were in Newport and how many are from Newport. Nick, let us know how many are from Newport.
Ms. Mancuso, he mentioned the Friendship Shelter and the ASL. So currently, neither the ASL, which has 45 beds, or the Friendship Shelter, which is bridge housing and 30 beds, neither of them vets or does background checks on any of the occupants. Would you do anything to change that? And should that be changed?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems that way, yes, but I just heard from a young woman named Anya in the Canyon about the public safety issue with homeless, and that the folks that live near the shelter are kind of in a crisis with how much crime they're seeing and the activity, and they're not feeling safe. They're not safe. So yes, I would be against no camping. I would be against a lot of this, but it has to be met with compassion, okay? So this is about networking with the 400 beds or whatever is in Orange County. It's also ours, and looking at where are these people coming from? Are people dumping them here? Because we do know that the hospital is a steady stream of homeless people getting dumped, and that's on camera, and that's been known since 2016. We know that Newport Beach, the police at one time were dumping people here. They just drove across Laguna Beach and get out, you know? So number one, we have to stop the dumping. We can't put up with that. And we have to increase capacity and work with our network.
Mr. Whalen, does she have a point?
Well, I think a point with respect to
With her disagreement with the anti-camping and with other cities dumping or the county dumping.
Well, a couple things on that. Yeah, our police force is attuned to that. We have had a couple incidents, and we got wind that the sheriff's department, which polices all of South County outside of Laguna, bringing people to the hospital as homeless individuals to the hospital is an easy way to get them off their hands. And then the hospital, under the rules they're governed by, once the patient's been treated, they have to release them. They can't return them. They can't send them back to Mission Viejo or San Clemente or whatever. They just have to release them. So our police has had conversations with the sheriff's department to say, no, don't do that. And we'll make it political if you continue to try to do that. We had another another van that dropped from North County at the ASL and dropped some individuals off there. So we made contact with the county folks and said, no, we run the only shelter in South County, and I think the city's proud to do that. And I think we've done a heck of a job with it over the years in providing those 45 beds and transitioned for, I think if you talk to Friendship Shelter folks, over 100 people out of permanent supportive housing, which I agree with George is right. That is the ultimate solution. But we're not going to solve everybody's problem. So, don't try to dump stuff here. We're onto it. We're not going to let it happen. And it shouldn't happen. It's the wrong thing to do. Those communities need to stand up and meet their own problems.
Okay. Ms. Jones, anything on this?
I think one of the things that I appreciate about our police department is I have the strong impression that our PD knows our homeless population. They know our unhoused residents. They know the issues that they're dealing with. They're working with them on a regular basis to get them the services they need. And I think that is the beauty of living in a small town. And I think we want to maintain that, right? So we need to maintain eyes and ears on the people who are coming into this community and try and get them the help that they need and the services that they need as quickly as we possibly can. Of course, we have to balance that with public safety. There's no doubt about that. And I think that what has been happening at the hospital has been a serious issue. And working with the hospital, working with the sheriff's department to make sure that we're not dealing with an influx of people who are extraordinarily troubled and in great need of help is a critical responsibility of the city.
Would you be open to budgeting for more park rangers and then maybe sending some park rangers in South Laguna as well, near the hospital?
For many more reasons other than our unhoused population, yes, absolutely. I think the park ranger program is a great program. I think it helps, with enforcement of our existing laws. It helps protect, the park rangers help protect our coastal resources, our open space resources. They help with a myriad of things. So yes, but not specifically for this issue, just in addition to.
Okay, thank you for that. SB4, the Affordable Housing on Faith Lands Act, provides a streamlined process for religious organizations and their nonprofit colleges to develop affordable housing on their property. SB4 makes it legal for faith-based institutions and nonprofit colleges to build affordable multifamily homes on lands that they own by streamlining the permitting process and overriding local zoning restrictions. The bill also guarantees by right approval of new homes as long as they are consistent with all objective building standards and comply with existing environmental protections. Mr. Whalen, I'm not asking you to opine on a specific project that has not even been proposed yet, but if the Neighborhood Congregational Church's affordable housing development is proposed as is, how will you use the specific parameters that are stated, that I just read in SB4, to ensure that it's appropriate for the community? And if you are reelected to the council, how will you help shape the church's proposed development while also appeasing concerned neighbors?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the Neighborhood Congregational Church proposal at all. So, but if we are submitted under SB4 projects at any location in town, as you point out, it's building by right as long as you meet the objective standards. Now, the one exception that I think the Coastal Commission agrees with is that you do need a coastal development permit. So there will be some element of local input, city input, by virtue of the fact that we issue the coastal development permits. It's not clear exactly how much discretion that will give us. The city attorney is looking at that right now, and we're awaiting, guidance on that. But in the event any of these projects, what I'm hearing is, most of these projects are very difficult difficult projects to do financially. They don't pencil, right? They need lots of assistance, grants, subsidies. So, I mean, if any of these projects were to approach the city for a financial contribution, and I think we've got, I mean, George and I have been working for the last couple of years on this and augmenting, you know, the city funding for housing. We've got over $2 million in the housing fund now. So if they approach us for financial assistance, you know, then we have leverage to negotiate, you know, beyond objective standards. So that may be the way a lot of these will have to go. But short of that, if the project says I'm complying with all the objective standards, I think the only input we're going to have is under the coastal development permit.
Mr. Weiss, do you agree with that?
Well, unfortunately, I do. I do want to see this project be neighborhood compatible. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be. I see it yet, but I won't find any further. When I was first approached about this project 3 years ago, they said it was going to be in the back toward Catalina, and it would be 20 or 30 units. And all of a sudden it's ballooned to 72 and now to 58. So I don't think the SB4 has been tested in the court either. So is it comply? Is CEQA overrule it at all? I don't know. I think that's still something that needs to be determined. So I think there's some avenues for us to push back, as Bob said, if they want money. Then we do have a role to play, or card in the game. The more money they want, the more role we have to play. The more money we put up, the smaller the size will be, I suppose. Because when you do these projects, they have to be done, when you're getting state and federal money, it has to be done through union labor. All of a sudden that balloons your cost up to 30-40%, unfortunately. So, and the church needs money. They want to lease this property to related companies and get a certain amount of money back and have a spiritual center there. So, you know, we'll see it when it comes forward, and I'll judge it by its merits.
Ms. Mancuso, how do you see this project, or the yet to be proposed project?
Well, I guess there was somewhat of a proposal. Are you saying not proposed at the city yet?
Correct.
Yeah, but there was one at the school. Unfortunately, it conflicted with one of our candidate forums. But I did watch a couple of the YouTube videos, and I don't understand why the spiritual center is 6,000 square foot when they can't fill the church right now that's, you know, meant for like 200 people and only 50 people come. So that seems really large, and I don't know what they're going to be doing with it. The architecture on the outside looked like, someone said it looked like, I can't remember which hotel it was that they found exactly kind of looked like it. But it's reminiscent of hotelish, big apartment, things that you see, you know, in LA or Irvine, but not here. So what I think, I mean, just looking at the outside, is it's just too big still, you know, and it needs to fit in our neighborhood, and it's not, and it needs to be staked, because also there hasn't been any staking. So, you know, hypothetically, it's not taking people's views away, but we don't know that. So there needs to be protection with the neighborhood, and we need to have influence with the developers, whatever way we can, whether it's through money and funding or whatever. I think a traffic study has to be done, the CDP, you know, whatever the state bill provides and whatever local power we have, we need to use. But what I saw on YouTube, it's not ready yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Jones, we're going to start with you for this one. How would you strike a balance between funding for the impact of visitors and the needs of businesses whose very survival depends on visitors?
Wait, she didn't, did you answer? She didn't answer.
I apologize. I apologize. I'm sorry.
I thought that was deliberate. Apparently doesn't want to hear what I have to think about this. Thank you, and thank you, Judy. I am also not going to offer an opinion on this project, but I do think it's really critical that the city get ahead of these affordable housing mandates, right? There is no doubt that we are under incredible pressure to provide affordable housing, not only because the state is requiring it, but also, I mean, it is just the right thing to do. It brings diversity and energy into our community. When I talk about affordable housing, I think about housing for my kids, you know, and I think about creating a community where young people can live and work and enjoy the hometown that they grew up in. So I think it's really important to do. And I think we have to get ahead of it by working with these developers, by working with these property owners to figure out how we can design the kind of affordable housing that we want, the kind of affordable housing that is in line with community character, fits in with the neighborhoods, and adds to a pedestrian and bike-friendly community. That's really what we need to do. We can't wait until gigantic projects are proposed and then, you know, decide we don't like it. We need to get ahead of it.
Would you put a limit on the amount of units that a project could have?
I don't like being that black and white. I really think you need to look at each individual project, the location, the size, all of those things.
Okay, thank you for that. We're staying with you here. You heard the first line already, so it's not a surprise.
Remind me.
Okay. How do you strike a balance between funding for the impact of visitors and the needs of businesses whose survival depends on visitors, particularly in the summer? Visit Laguna, which is a private nonprofit business whose directive is right there in the name, Visit Laguna. Their task was to draw visitors, which they did, yet because of this past summer and the public outcry of the amount of visitors that we had, their CEO was forced out. The Visit Laguna Board's makeup currently includes a sitting city council member and a member of city management. Do you see that as a conflict of interest? And how do you envision the city's relationship with Visit Laguna moving forward?
That was a lot of questions.
It was.
So I'm going to try and go back to the beginning and start with that.
And I will help you with adding.
Thank you. And Aaron, maybe you can give me a little heads up if I start running out of time.
Take your time on this one.
Thank you. So I think I've heard from so many people and experienced myself, this summer was just incredible in terms of the crush of people we had in this town. A lot of day trippers, right? A lot of people who are coming to Laguna for the day, spending the day at our incredibly beautiful beaches. We can't blame them. I want to spend the day at the beach too. I get it. Having impacts on our natural resources, but also on our quality of life as residents, and going home without necessarily contributing to the economy of our community. And we need to figure out how we can capture some of those dollars from our day trippers. Parking is the easy answer, as easy as things ever get in this town. We do have to negotiate with the Coastal Commission, which regulates the amount we can charge for parking and where we can provide paid parking. But parking is an easy way for us to capture some dollars from day trippers without necessarily impacting our residents. I also think that the Coastal Commission, has two mandates, right? Provide coastal access and protect coastal resources. And we are not the only community that is seeing this aspect of that, providing coastal access, starting to impact the other aspect of Coastal Commission's mission, which is those coastal resources. We're seeing that every single day on our beaches, and we are not the only ones. So I think there's a lot of work that can and should and is already being done with Coastal Commission to start to get support from them to protect these coastal resources. You can't just say, everybody go down to Laguna Beach and enjoy our tide pools, and then not provide the protection for those incredibly fragile marine habitats. So I think that's the other aspect of it. Remind me of the, Visit Laguna.
Visit Laguna and the fact that we have a sitting city council member and a member of city management on their board, is that a conflict?
I don't think having a city council member on their board is a conflict. When I headed up Laguna Canyon Foundation, we had a mandated seat for a city council member. And it was so valuable to get city perspective on some of the issues that we at Laguna Canyon Foundation were dealing with. So I don't necessarily see that as a conflict of interest. I do have concerns with our staff at City Hall. These are people who are working hard and who have a lot on their plates, and I want to be careful how we portion out those resources.
Mr. Whalen?
Well, I think that, obviously the visitor issue was acute this summer and people felt it very much. There's no, and we've had this question I think at every forum, so there's no easy answer or solution for, visitor impacts. But we are looking at alternatives. I think we're going to have a surge in terms of summertime, personnel at the beaches, like the question you had earlier, yes, I support more park rangers. Yes, I think we can budget for them. You know, we have 8 currently. We could probably double that for another $1 million a year, which I would be in favor of looking for ways to do that out of our existing budget. You know, and more enforcement, I think, is going to be a key part of it. You know, we've heard that we lack parking enforcement, we lack traffic enforcement, we lack, you know, efforts at the beaches. So I think enforcement is a key part of making people feel better about it. Now, you can't limit anybody coming to town, right? Everybody gets to come. So what we can do, what we've tried to do, is incentivize people to get out of their cars and, you know, and then use our free trolley or Laguna Local, right, which is also free, to try to get downtown. It is, everybody though thinks, you know, it's difficult to get people to change their habits. We lease 168 spots down at the hospital every summer, and we have free parking. And we say, free park, get on the trolley, go where you're going in town. And the occupancy on that, the usage is about something like 50%. And you just say, why? You know, why? It's free. Why can't we do that? It's hard for people to change their habits. We have had more success on this end of town with the Summer Breeze, where people can park up in the top of the canyon and take a trolley down. That has increased ridership, which is good. So I think, you know, enforcement is going to be a key part of it. And on the Visit Laguna piece, I think that's up for renewal next summer by July 1. And I do think restructuring that board is an important part of that. I think getting more community members on the board. Historically, it's just been representatives of the hotels, a council person, and a staff person. So I think broadening that out is a good thing and should be done.
Okay, Mr. Weiss, would you exclude a council person and a staff person from that board?
I probably would. I think there is a bit of a conflict. I think it should have a liaison from the city council, but not fully on the board with the voting rights. So I would agree with that.
And how would you incentivize, because Mr. Whalen makes the point that there's a lot of parking at the hospital that we get, and there's 50% usage of the trolley that's free in town. How would you incentivize that?
This is an internal problem we're going to have with visitors. So we need to get visitors out of the cars, and we need to get them to park in the periphery. The Summer Breeze program has worked very well, but this is a regional problem. These are coastal resources that we're maintaining in a way, and we're the guardians of, but yet we don't have the kind of funds to do it as it should be done, because we see the tide pools are going and the impacts on the environment and the trash are all our problem. So the county and Coastal Commission doesn't have any money, but they are a state agency. They should be helping us accomplish that goal. And I think it's a big goal to accomplish. We need to get people out of their cars at the city limits, at the minimum downtown. Building more parking structures is not going to do that. Widening freeways doesn't, temporarily helps relieve traffic, but then it goes back because people say, oh, I can get on that freeway now. It's got an extra lane. The same thing with parking. But we have to have a long-term solution to keep people out of their cars, and I think we can do that.
What is your long-term solution?
Well, I would look at tolling. I would look at tolling cars coming into town. If they want to park, if they want to come into this town and create environmental impacts, they're going to pay for that. And if they don't want to do that, then they should park in the periphery, and we give them an ice cream cone and a free ride.
So you would set up toll booths on either end of the
those are
highway?
gone. Those are gone. They're only in states where they have union labor, like Illinois. I haven't thought this all out, but because it needs to be a regional approach. Does that mean we have to take over Laguna Canyon Road? Maybe it does. If we could pay for it that way, I would, because I think this is a massive problem, and we're not going to work our way out of it. And it's a public safety issue. If we get this many cars on the 4th of July and something bad happens, God forgive us, we're not going to be able to evacuate people in time. So I think it has to be a big effort, and I'm not saying I can do it alone.
Okay. Ms. Mancuso?
Okay, this is a big one, and I'm going to talk fast to cover a lot of area. So this is a 2007 document, Visitors and Conference Bureau, that says that there are 6.13 million visitors and what the annual cost is. And I have different documents through the years. In 2016, when I first ran, the papers reported that the emergency services were up 400%. Oh, by the way, this year they were up 400%. So this is not new. This is the rock coming down the mountain that has become a boulder the size of an 18-wheeler truck, and it slammed everybody in the head this year. And finally, our council is taking some action. But we talked about enforcement in 2016 when I took a leadership Laguna class, and I asked Chief Farinella, do we give out tickets for littering? And the answer was no, we do not enforce for that. That is just the way that they do things. They weren't enforcing for it. Parking tickets, none of this is new. I just want to address that Laguna Beach Visitors Bureau got $1.6 in the budget. Laguna Art Museum, Molten Playhouse, College and Arts, the LCAD Arts Commission program got $322,000. Now we're supposed to be an arts town, but yet we give peanuts to the arts and we're giving it all to the Visitors Bureau. What does that make us? It makes us a tourist town, not an art town. And we need to...
So we're talking about empty storefronts. How do you reconcile both?
The empty storefronts, what I'm saying is that we need to take this money away, and we do need to redo the board, because I do believe there's conflict of interest, and we do need to have public members on it, and we need to take some of this money away. It can go to the arts, it can go wherever. If we need to run a bill or whatever we need to do to take some of this money for enforcement, but it needs to come out of advertising Laguna Beach. We don't need to tell one more person that we have beautiful beaches. They know, and they know all over the planet.
So I think my question is, we take the money away from Visit Laguna so they can't advertise our town, yet give it to art galleries, artists, the art community.
They can advertise the festival. They can advertise the museum. Advertise the things that people can come to and bring commerce. Don't focus on the little nooks and cranny beaches that then everyone comes and destroys, right? So maybe shift the focus of that advertisement so that we can bring in the commerce.
Mr. Whalen, do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, a couple things. First of all, and I want to clear up, Visit Laguna is it's a self-assessed by the hotels, 2% bed tax. Half of it goes to the arts and half of it goes to Visit Laguna under the current formula. So it's a 50-50 split. It's not city money. We don't budget. It's their money, right, that they allocate. And, so when it comes up for renewal, that can change, that allocation can change, but that's what it is right now. People say, well, take the money away from them. Well, here's what's happening in Newport Beach. The hotels up there are looking at basically a private assessment. They just say, forget it, we're done with the city. We don't want to deal with it anymore. So we're going to just assess ourselves and we'll promote the way we want to promote. Well, I think that's the worst outcome, because then you don't have any control. You don't have any public input. So I think we restructure Visit Laguna, get community input into it, continue to enjoy the largesse that they've, $3.5 million a year for 20 years, and make good use of it. So I think that's what we need to do.
Okay. Any final thoughts on this? Okay. Let's go ahead and take a break. 10-minute break.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, and we're back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We appreciate you being here. One more big hand for all 4 candidates. A couple of more items to cover. I did mention that the incumbents have records, and they will be defending those records here shortly. But first, I want to start with a statement that Mr. Weiss made earlier, and that was that we don't need any more parking structures. I'll point that question at Mr. Whalen. Mr. Whalen, do we need more parking structures? If so, where?
Well, there's 2 that actually are being pursued by the city currently, and I support both of them. The one is Glenary Street parking structure. Morris Skindary, local architect, gave us plans that he'd come up with a year ago to add a partial 3rd deck, which would be about 35 or so spaces up there. So, we've talked to our public works group. They've looked at it. It's from an engineering perspective, it's viable. So that's one. And then the other is behind City Hall here, about 323 spaces. A number of those, maybe 140, 150, I don't know the exact number, would be, for city vehicles, and the rest would be open for the public. I think, utilizing the lot next door, we're going to get our master facilities update in November, I think. So, utilizing this lot next door, surface parking is not the most efficient use of that property. But the property's so valuable in Laguna, I think that'll allow us to move that parking there back into the back in a structure. So I do support those 2. I think they make sense. That's the 2 I think we need to focus on right now.
Okay, and Mr. Weiss, you published a blog that you refer to as a recap of council meetings. And in that, you were critical, and you've been during council meetings, critical of traffic and parking master plan subcommittee, and that's Mr. Whalen and Mayor Kemp, about their work to find suitable placement for parking structures. And at one point you stated perception versus reality, and that there isn't a parking problem, yet with regard to the promenade, your claim is that it eats up vital parking. So my question to you, sir, is which is it? Do we need a parking master plan or not?
Well, we had a parking master and transit plan that had 14 different parking structures or lots that we could build on, including one at the lawn bowling area. I was like, what? We're going to build a parking structure at the lawn bowling area? We're going to build one at Aliso Creek, 365 spaces?
Mr. Whalen just said we're not, though.
I understand that. That was proposed. It's kind of scary when something's proposed like that. We can have a conversation with Bob about that, but you're asking me a question, so I'm going to answer it.
Please do.
Okay, so I think we can maximize parking spaces where we can. One area, okay, we built 35 spaces. Laguna Terrace, for example, the city has just sent a proposal to those folks to try again to get those spaces. I know Sue worked on that a long time ago, the mayor. There's a lot of 5th Street. I've been asking the owner to consider allowing the city to lease that at low cost or do a revenue share. Maybe it'll give us 20 spaces. Same thing with the property. If we do go forward and buy that property for a much lower price, the Blevins property that is at Catalina across the Village Fair Park, then we maybe could park 20 spaces there too. So we have to look for places to park people where we can maximize parking in places we can. But I don't believe big parking structures like the one at the Presbyterian Church that was proposed, that was stopped, that we would never own for $13 million is such a good idea. So that's where I am with parking. I also think that residents just have been shortchanged on the number of spaces they have at our various parking structures. The only ones I know of, and maybe there are more, are at the Trish Duda Laguna Drug. There's actually, it says resident parking only with their tags. I'd like to see a lot more of that for residents, because I think we should have those, not that they need to be a lot.
What specific percentage would you look for in each parking lot, whether it's 20 or 50 spaces available? What percentage would you want to be residents?
In terms of, rephrase that question.
So let's say you build a lot that has 50 spaces on it. What
Yeah.
percentage of those spaces would you want to be resident spaces?
I think that has to be done by the staff to determine that. What is the use? What's the kind of residential parking stickers? Where do residents go? And you base it on where we travel, and not on an arbitrary characteristic of saying 10%, 5%. I don't know what the number is.
Ms.
We'll
Jim.
with staff.
Ms. Jones, what are your thoughts on parking structure or more?
I really support the idea, and I think the city's already doing this, of finding the small little spaces, right? Like, how can we get peripheral parking in small little lots and parcels around the city? I'm a huge proponent of getting people out of their cars, not only because it adds to our quality of life. It's nice to have a pedestrian-friendly town, but it's also the right thing to do environmentally. And I would be really concerned about building a gigantic and expensive parking structure that then, ideally, I know this sounds idealistic, bear with me, you guys. Ideally, as we move towards a car-free culture, it isn't necessary. I am interested, and I've said this, and I'm saying this very carefully. I would be interested in seeing what a parking structure behind City Hall would look like and what it would cost. And the reason that I like that location as a possibility, I'm going to couch that just a few more times as I answer this. The reason that I like that location as a potential possibility is because I like the idea of a structure being used year-round by providing parking for our not only our city staff, our city employees, but also the employees of local businesses. If you have someone who works at a restaurant downtown or they work at a store downtown, they're parking in our neighborhoods because they don't have the shopper permits that we have. They're parking in our neighborhoods and they're walking to work. And that makes it hard for any businesses to recruit employees, makes it hard for the employees to get to work on time, and it impacts us in our neighborhoods. So, I think providing parking for local business employees would be kind of like a multi-use benefit there, right? You have a structure that could be used for the tourists in the busy season, and it could be used for employees in the quieter seasons.
Ms. Mancuso, I saw you shaking your head. What are your thoughts?
Well, I am against a parking structure in downtown Laguna Beach because I think it brings more congestion and pollution, and that is not the direction we should be going in.
Would you oppose an extra structure maybe on the canyon somewhere?
Well, I've been talking about the Act 5 lot being the parking structure and having electric vehicles shuttle people back and forth. And I think that if we would have done that years ago when we first were talking about that, we would not be belaboring this. This is again in action for so many years. The other inaction was the city did a parking report, and who knows how many hundreds of thousands it cost at the time, but it was presented and it said that we needed to go out to all the private lots across Laguna Beach and start negotiating with them that we could start parking there, right? And we would do it in the evenings, on weekends, whenever they weren't being used. And I remember Sheree started the process. I remember the city council meeting, Bob talking about it because Joe Hanauer was in the audience. And Joe came up to the microphone and said, I love this idea. I have a lot at the Pottery, his building.
Pottery Place.
Thank you, Pottery Place. And it could be a part of this plan. And it was great. Everybody loved it. Nothing, right? Here we are, 2024, October, and we're talking about it again. So there's not a lack of good ideas. There's not a lack of things to do. We just haven't done it.
Mr. Whalen, address those concerns, please.
Well, I disagree with Judy on that. I mean, the parking plan was approved, I think, in June or July of 2023. It had like 20 short-term, and some medium-term, and some longer-term. And a number of the short-term items have already been addressed and implemented. With respect to those negotiations, Michael Litchie, the head of our transportation department, is still working on those. One thing you got to realize, and I've kind of heard this at a few different things, oh, it's taken a long time, so we should just give up on it? No, hard things take a long time, and it's gonna take time to negotiate a lot of these leases with private operators or property owners, and some of them aren't gonna be interested at all, and some of them will be interested, and we'll make a deal. So it is moving ahead, and what I wanna say is it takes a lot of time and work. I mean, Mayor and I spent 9-10 months putting that parking plan together, and there were not 14 recommended by the subcommittee. Subcommittee recommended proceeding with 2. And we proceeded with 2, with Laneri and this one back here. The lawn bowling one was looked at by staff, and they came up with a long list of potentials. So, you know, when you kind of throw these facts out, you got to be accurate with your facts. We did not recommend 14. That's just a misrepresentation of what the subcommittee recommendation was. It's in that staff report.
Mr. Weiss?
That's absolutely not true. I mean, I recall the discussion there, and Mark Orgill said, yeah, he was okay with 365 spaces behind at Elisa Creek. The record is in the public record. And we did discuss the lawn bowling recommendation of the committee to consider. The final recommendation was it was dismissed because the lawn bowling folks can't hear with their balls. So, no, I mean, they went crazy. Where are you going to put it, underneath the lawn bowling? So it's just a really crazy idea.
I encourage you to go back to the staff report and look at the recommendations, George.
Well,
You'll
that
see
came
the
later.
you'll
That
see
came later.
Go back and look at the recommendations that the subcommittee made to council.
All I know is what I saw and what Mark Orgill said about that and what the lawn bowling folks said about it. We pushed it back just as we did the parking structure for the Presbyterian Church, which didn't make financial sense.
Let's just be careful about what you attribute to who, right?
I didn't.
I was part of the subcommittee.
I didn't mention your name at all.
But you did say the subcommittee, and the subcommittee was only 2 people.
I think the staff report is part of that thing, and whether that they recommended specifically, that's the work. That's the work that was brought forward.
So you
There
would
was also
consider,
five
you would
other
consider,
parties
you would consider that just healthy discussion?
Well, I don't think the problem with a lot of agenda bills, if you want to go there, is they are initiated by certain council members and their name isn't on them. So they have deniability. We didn't do that. And
My name was on that one.
Yeah.
My name was on that.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Thank you, Bob. The other thing I would say is, I'm not trying to disparage your role in this, but that was about the biggest agenda bill I've ever seen in my life in terms of options. And many of them good, which I voted for. 500 parking spaces for business workers. 500. We have 1,600 private spaces in downtown. We have about the same public spaces downtown. So that was an increase over what we had before. And I approved that in the master parking circulation plan. Thank you.
Anyone else on this? Okay. I did mention that we were going to hold the incumbents, hold you accountable for some of the things that you've said, some of the things you've done. This morning, as soon as it came out, Mr. Weiss, that back on October 8th, Tom Johnson of Stu News correctly noted that your claims of Laguna Beach's crime rate being on par with Anaheim and Santa Ana were completely unfounded. A crimes and clearances report by the California Department of Justice lists Laguna Beach's violent crimes and property crimes totals for far less than surrounding communities, many surrounding communities. According to the FBI, the way you calculated the numbers are inaccurate, misleading, and possibly deceptive. The FBI has a long-standing policy against ranking participating law enforcement agencies on the basis of crime data alone. So why would you tout a calculation that the FBI has repeatedly and explicitly warned against as being misleading? And the question is, are you looking to sully the exemplary record of Police Chief Jeff Galvin?
I think if you look at the crime stats over time, they're not good for Laguna Beach. And regardless of how you slice them and dice them, violent crime, robbery is up and has been. And then it went down, and then it went up. So there's no doubt in the way that I based the data I got, and I didn't create it, was that we were third in violent crime.
Who did create the data you got?
That came from the FBI, but it wasn't an FBI slice and dice of the database. But I do have, and I'm happy to support that. I'd have to pull out volumes of data to do that, but I'm willing to do that. But I'm not going to, I defend what I said. We've had violent crimes in this town that pretty much shocked us with the bludgeoning of a woman behind the Rivian Theater. Who would have thought that would happen to her? And so I'm concerned about crime, and we don't report it very well. The police department has refused to come to council and discuss the crime stats. Instead, they released them on a public press release instead of discussing them here in this council. Why? I wonder. I don't know. DUIs certainly are up, and who are those, done by? I think they're probably more visitors, done by more visitors than they are.
So if DUIs are up, that means that they're being stopped and being arrested for being drunk while driving, correct?
Pardon me?
If DUI numbers are up, doesn't that mean that our police are doing their job by stopping people?
It does, but it's a scary stat, just like everything. 1 out of 20 murders aren't solved, 1 out of 20 murders are solved, the rest of them aren't solved, okay? So it's the tip of the iceberg. Whenever you have a DUI about 18, DUIs don't get arrested. DUIs, perpetrators of DUIs. That's a concern, and it should be. We have the largest number of places to buy a drink of any place in California for our size. How many more places do we need? And those places people do imbibe and they get drunk.
And so your proposal is?
Well, I don't have a proposal to stop people from drinking. We have to, drinking is fine in moderation, but too often it's difficult to stop those folks. We've had an education program for the police to go into bars and restaurants and serve, to tell them what to do. That needs to continue and be reinforced, but there's no silver bullet on stopping it. Maybe we shouldn't have any more liquor stores or liquor opportunities to stop.
And the final part of my question was your attempt to sully the reputation of Chief Jeff Calvert?
Absolutely not. I don't.
How's your relationship with him?
Do you want me to talk about the police department? I'd be happy to.
I would just want to answer the question.
I've met with Chief Calvert 2 or 3 times. I have not found him to tell the truth all the time. And I'll say that to the public because that's my experience. Okay, unfortunately, and so I question a lot of his decisions and how he works. And the fact is, in 2021, when I first encountered the police chief we had prior to Calvert being dismissed, I discovered that there was literally a cabal that got rid of that guy. And I got
you said Calvert being dismissed. Did you mean someone else?
No, not Calvert being dismissed.
That's what you said?
That was Thompson.
Okay.
Thompson being dismissed. So I got a very, and I'll be happy to take some time to talk about
Please.
this if you'd like from the public. I got very concerned about how a guy who was 15 years into the FBI and became our police chief and rejected the job previously was hired and then dismissed within 5 months. Unadministrated, and then he just left. His former town hired him like that, with a raise and a contract.
Did you see the YouTube video that a passerby shot that was shooting YouTube footage of him at his former job?
I did not see that.
Okay.
And I don't take any one event as something that dismisses somebody or says this guy's a bad guy. Again, I say he has a master's degree from Webster University in St. Louis. He worked for the FBI. He may have had some faults, right? But let's face it, the police is the most important thing in our city. It's even more important than fire because impacts are immediate and death can occur at any time. So when I saw that occur, I got very interested in what was going on in the police, and it wasn't good.
Ms. Jones, talk to us about the importance of a council member's relationship with the police department.
I feel like I've just been dropped into a pot of boiling water. Thank you for that. I think it is the city council's role to work collaboratively with the police department, with the fire department, with the leadership of those departments, but also, working members of those departments. I had a longstanding and productive relationship with the fire department in my role at the Laguna Community Foundation. In my opinion, our police department's doing a great job. I think we need to continue to appropriately resource them. We need to appropriately staff that department. And we need to make sure that we're able to not just recruit the best police officers, but also retain them. I think we've had an issue with police department retention, partially because of the fact that there's just not that many opportunities for advancement in a small city and a small police department. So we definitely need to make sure that we're continuing to support our first responders, not only police but also fire.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mancuso, wish to weigh in?
I don't know all that history. I really like Chief Calvert, and I'm super appreciative of everybody. As a matter of fact, I just gave a bunch of praise to one of the officers today that was helping me with something, so I've just never had anything negative come up, and they seem to be going above and beyond their jobs. I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you all for that answer. Mr. Whalen, you had mentioned during the last council meeting that Seth Teagan from Mission Hospital had not reported to council in over a year after agreeing to do so regularly before council. A lot of residents feel that we've been far too patient with Mission Hospital and with Mr. Teagan with regard to both their release into the community of mentally ill homeless patients left there by sheriff's officials and their still unannounced plans regarding their services that remain available to our community. My question is, have we taken our eye off the ball with the hospital? And how will you assure their accountability if you're reelected? And also, after you, I'll come to Mr. Weiss because he's the other liaison to the hospital.
Right, after that meeting, I reached out to the city manager and said that, we had been promised by the hospital regular updates. We hadn't gotten them. It was a year, I think, between the updates. So they're in the process of setting up, the city manager reached out to them, they're in the process of setting up a meeting with the hospital and to get more regular input back here at council. With respect to the releasing of individuals, as I said earlier, the hospital has no right to direct a patient that they're releasing to go anywhere. They can give them a bus pass, they can give them an Uber, they can offer them transportation, but they can't say leave our city. That's just not consistent with the law. So what we've done, as I said earlier, is we've tried to work with the sheriff's department to say, if an individual really needs to come to the hospital for treatment, that's fine, but don't utilize it as an off-ramp or a repository for problems that you otherwise don't want to deal with. In terms of the long-term use for the hospital, I honestly think they don't know what they want to do. They are looking at, it's a larger campus, it's got the main hospital over there, we're this small, part of Mission. I think they will commit to keeping an emergency room open there, and I think the city needs to press it very, very hard to make sure that's always the case. I don't think they're gonna, their big issue is whether they can renovate and meet seismic standards on the tower. And I don't think they can. I think it's going to be too expensive, and they're going to say, we're not going to renovate that tower to the 2030 standards that are applied to all hospitals. I think that provides some opportunities to us as a city, because I think they will look at, housing opportunities there. There might be assisted living, might be senior housing. So I think it could be a plus. I think it could be a win, but we've got to keep that emergency room there.
Mr. Weiss, you're also a liaison to the hospital. If re-elected, would you want to continue to be a liaison, and what would you do?
Yeah, I was kind of the second man on the totem pole here. I didn't get to go to the last meeting that we had with the hospital, and they haven't met their obligation to inform us, although probably not much has happened.
Now, when you say you didn't get to go, why was that?
I wasn't informed of the meeting. Thank you. So I think, I do believe the hospital owes us, as a good neighbor, updates every 3-6 months, and I'm willing to attend those, certainly. I think I agree with most of what Bob says. The release of these patients isn't something we can force. We can offer them a ride back to where they came from. Maybe other incentives to go back to where they came from, because that's their home, I assume. But I assume most of them are homeless as well. So I don't know how much leverage we have there. I do think the hospital's future is not very bright if we look at the past. And so those conversations have to be had with the hospital as to what their intention is. What are they going to do? Are they going to sell part of it? Are they going to sell half of it? I don't know how it's divided, but I'm happy to work with who's ever on that committee to make the right decisions for the city.
Ms. Mancuso, how would you use your experience to deal with the hospital?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't allow them to just ignore giving us the data. I mean, that is not being a good partner if it's been a year and that we know what's going on. I first learned of this issue when I jumped in 2016. I did not know anything about patient dumping, and I got photos and videos sent to me. And, you know, the people still have their hospital bracelet on and literally just left right at that stoplight. And so that's 8 years. I would think in 8 years' time, we could have worked something out. And again, this has to do with using other resources within our jurisdiction. If we don't already have them, that somebody needs to be working with the hospital in coordinating these releases. Where did the person come from? Can we get them back there? Is there some family somewhere that they can go to?
You said you wouldn't allow them not to share data. What specifically would you do to get data from them?
I mean, you gotta just stay on top of the squeaky wheel gets the oil in most cases, and I would try that first. I feel like we have to keep the emergency room. I don't know what that takes to keep an emergency room there, but that has to be front and center. We can't be going to Sand Canyon or, you know, that's just out of the question.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I was born in that hospital. That hospital has a long standing, it's a big part of this community. We absolutely cannot lose the emergency room. We can't. It's my understanding that the hospital's been required to keep that emergency room open, I believe by the state for a certain period of time. So we need to be putting continued pressure on the state to keep that emergency room open. I think that just like some of these other projects that we're talking about, you know, we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about all of these big things, right? And it is the responsibility, in my opinion, of the city council to be, again, getting in front of these things and working with the hospital to figure out exactly how we could potentially use that space, how we could potentially partner with them on the things that we as a community know we need, rather than sitting back and waiting for them to make up their minds.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weiss, in your 4 years on the council, your temperament has come into question. There have been multiple reports about your behavior and treatment to staff. Are any of these reports accurate? And if not, how do you explain them away?
I don't see, could you provide the report, Stanley, before I answer the question? Thank you.
Okay, then let's talk about your blog.
So there's just an allegation at this point.
Then let's talk about your blog.
From you, Ed. If you can cite specific instances.
Okay.
So
on February 15th of 2023, former city manager Sheree Dupuis brought a complaint against you in which she alleged that you were creating a hostile work environment on account of her national origin and gender. She also alleged that you were bullying during private meetings and council meetings. On April 7th of 2023, the City Council authorized Liebert Cassidy Whitmore to retain an outside investigator, Barbara Renew, an employment attorney and neutral workplace investigator with the law firm Woodruff & Smart, to conduct the investigation. She did conduct the investigation and found that the following allegations were sustained. During a meeting between you and Dupuis in July or August of 2021, you became aggressive, agitated, and intimidating toward Dupuis with regards to her comment that she worked for the City Council majority. You raised your voice and pounded your fist on Dupuis' desk, and you cut her off when she tried to explain herself. Also, during a meeting between you, Dupuy, and Ken Domer on or around October of 2022, that you became angry, raised your voice, pounded your fist on Dupuy's desk, and took issue with Dupuy for not supporting you with regards to the Laguna Beach County Water District taking over sewer services from the city.
Well, I can say that this is not your silver bullet to get me, that's for sure.
Looking for a silver bullet.
Let me just say this about Ms. Dupuy. She was a disaster for this town. And pretty much the whole, with a few exceptions, agree with that. She destroyed the culture of this town. And as for the two meetings, I've never pounded my fist on anybody's table except for food at home when I was a little kid. And yeah, that's understandable. So this is coming from a person who's was a compulsive liar. You could talk to her for 5 minutes and she would lie without even needing to. So that's been my experience, and that the record shows that. I mean, and that's not just me, it's other people, and I can quote you so many of them that have commented on her behavior to residents. So in no way have I was ever hostile to her, maybe upset with her. She had me in her office, and I'll tell you, she said, George, you know, you understand the chain of command, don't you? And I said, yeah, I was in the military, but this isn't the military. But everybody reports to me, she said. That was frightening.
So just yesterday, you posted on your blog that the opinion of a supporter of yours who stated that, quote, it was Bob Whalen and Sue Kemp who orchestrated that fistful of dollars for the city manager on her way out the door. Trying to blame anyone other than Bob and Sue is, of course, laughable and absurd. Yet, I just read you what I read you about the findings there. Do you accept any responsibility at all for those events?
Absolutely.
Or the payouts?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Here's what the council, they realized that the council would still be here if there were 3 members of the council who continued to support her. There weren't. The events of May 2nd proved that, you know, where you had a hostile group of people hired by Mo to invade his former properties. The city already at the time knew those properties were not owned by Mo. He was a member of MOM, but not Mo. So the fact that that was mishandled so badly, and that allowed as a business dispute. And what I said was, you know, it's a business dispute until you trespass, and then it's not a business dispute. So, you know, Mom had some demands to remove her, and those were met because she was a liability to the city, and huge lawsuits could have occurred. And that's just the honest truth.
Mr. Wayne, is that the honest truth?
What is what the honest truth?
Mr. Weiss's recollection of the events and the way that Ms. Dupuy was let go.
Well, you know, as I said here, the night we released all the information to the public, and I think George commended me, in fact, at the time for the explanation. What we did as a council, and it was unanimous in the end, 4-0. George was not permitted to vote because he would have had a conflict of interest because he was the subject of the
No, I was a victim.
He was the subject of the allegations. So 4-0, you know, orchestrated by Bob and Sue, I don't think so. I think what people realized, and the explanation we gave, and I still believe is absolutely correct, we managed that situation to minimize the ultimate cost to the city. And that's what we did. And rather than engaging in years and years of litigation and dragging, you know, who knows what, you know, through the courts for how long, we collectively decided to settle it, and we did settle it. And I still think it was the best decision for the city. You know, you would have had staff members tied up in court and depositions and, you know, the inefficiencies of all that. So anyway, I think we did the right thing, and as I said that evening, George there was a question whether we concluded that he was guilty of the allegations, and I said no, we didn't reach that. What we did was we looked at the entire situation and said, what's the best outcome here for the city as an institution and for the taxpayers? And that's the decision we made, and I think we made the right one.
If I may, Sherry signed your severance agreement August 14th, if I remember correctly. The report that was done by the law firm hired this person investigator. That was the same law firm that defended Sherry on the citation as well. He spent $55,000 on that with that law firm, and then the doctoring or the normalizing of the video, whatever you want to call it. So it's absolutely untrue. All of this is necessitated. Sherry could have been, I recommended she be fired by call for cause.
You used the term doctoring of the video.
Yeah, well, no, it was sort of, it was another term used, but it's not normalization.
So doctoring is not the correct term.
No, doctoring is not the correct term. I would call it. It was speeded up, I believe, so it wasn't visibly as accurate as it could be. But that was another one of those faults that Sherry had with using her office to say, talking to the police chief. The other was in the last instance when she left, people weren't being paid. And she said that it was bank error, but it wasn't. And we had documentation that the bank said it wasn't us, it was you. It didn't tell us to raise your limit on the payroll. So she was caught in a number of inaccuracies. And the fact that she, on this dais, excoriated 4 women without any evidence. And then the following day had some fish emulsion. And she couldn't tell the difference between fish emulsion as a public works director and sewage, raw sewage, poop.
Wouldn't either be bad? If you had fish emulsion on your
I'm just telling you what occurred and what was eventually discovered. Press release was sent out within hours of that event, certainly taking away any light being shown on the 4 women and the events of that occurred. So there were a number of instances, I think, that her judgment came into, her judgment as an operator. She didn't have the experience. There was a 3-2 vote to hire her, and it was a mistake. We could have hired the youngest city manager in California history instead, and we didn't, and look what happened. We got to a situation where she was threatening the lawsuit, which I think would have been thrown out of court based on her behavior in court, but the city didn't want to go there and felt that paying her off was the best thing to do.
Ms. Jones, the importance of working closely with the city manager?
That's not the question you had. I'm sorry, that's a different question.
I'm going to answer this in a different way. And I'm going to say this. I worked with city council, city staff for a long time in my role at Laguna Canyon Foundation. And I got to the point where I was so tired of seeing these things taking up our city council's very valuable time and our city staff's very, very valuable time. We have important work to do. If I'm lucky enough to be elected to the council, we're going to have incredibly important, consequential work. We're going to be talking about things that 50 years from now, people are going to wonder how those decisions were made. And perhaps I'm getting a little tired towards the end of the election, but I'm tired of this. We've got work to do. Let's put our heads down. Let's figure out how to work together. Let's work collaboratively, and let's get the stuff done.
Ms. Mancuso, to her point, too much animosity on the dice?
Yeah, I've worked with difficult people in my life, and I've worked with wonderful people in my life, and I just tried my best to get along and to keep it professional and come from a place of compassion and, just work with others. Like I said, one of my jobs was managing 30, database designers and engineers, and it was challenging, and you have to come from a loving place and try to get along with everyone. That kind of works for me. I've gone up against my big opposition at the Capitol and met with my opponents on bills, and you just take a big deep breath and you sit down and you talk to them, and keep it professional. That's it.
I'm going to keep it with you for just a moment if I could. Am I right in saying that you're opposed to a permanent promenade?
Oh, the promenade. So
Correct.
the promenade, I don't want to give you my personal opinion because I have said that I don't care. When it was parking spots, I used to park there. I'd jump out of my car and go buy olive oil or whatever, get in my car and leave. And now that it's a promenade, I've sat and I've had a plate of pasta, right? So I'm going to use it, whatever it is the bottom line. There are folks here in the audience right now that would like to see it as the hybrid version. I think coming out of COVID, it would have been great to do a hybrid at the time and say, okay, because if all the businesses loved it, then this would be a moot point, but they don't. And they feel that it's very inequitable, that the restaurants are benefiting and everyone else is suffering, right? So we do need to take that into consideration. And I think that it's been this pilot project for this long that we could shift it and say, okay, for the next 6 months, we're going to do a hybrid where half of it is still restaurants and the other half is parking and bicycle route or something, whatever you want it to be. And then for the next 6 months, you could do something else. I mean, it is ours to do what we want with. And if we want to experiment and find what is the happy place for everyone, but I do think the businesses should be taken into consideration.
Ms. Jones, is she courting disaster by putting half parking, half pedestrian, half restaurants?
I'm going to give my own perspective on this.
Please.
And my perspective on this just personally, I love the promenade. I use the promenade all the time. I like to sit there and drink my coffee. I like to walk my dog through there. I enjoy the promenade. I think it has really become the town square of this community, and I think that's a good thing. I think anytime we're looking at big changes like that, we need to be working, and I think that if I got this correct, Judy, this is where you and I are really aligned. We need to be working with the merchants. We need to be working with those store owners to make sure that we're designing something that's going to support their business and their way of life as well. We don't want to hurt our small businesses. That's the last thing we want to do. And I really look at Bouchard's as an exemplary instance of a store that I think is doing well. I love shopping at Bouchard's, not just for my prescriptions, which I'm committed to getting there because I want to support that business, but also just to cruise through there and see what kind of new perfumes they might have, or if I need a bottle of sunscreen. And I see visitors in that store as well. So I think that we can work with those businesses to make sure that we're supporting them while protecting the things that we want as a community.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, New York has had a Times Square since 2009. That's essentially our promenade. No parking, no cars, Times Square since 2009. And seen sales tax collection increase by 100%. Can we use that as a model for our promenade?
Yeah, I haven't been to Times Square in a long time, so I'll have to go there first and tell you. I don't know. Is it a fun place to be? I think the promenade can be. I voted the last number of times for the promenade to continue, but I do have concerns for retail. And that I have 64 pages here, and they're pretty small print of comments on the promenade. And most of them have said, we ain't been involved enough, and it's from residents. And I take that seriously. I just want to read one of them. David Schroeder, and I've read this before. Forest Avenue, as it existed before the COVID pandemic, was a historical treasure, unique in Southern California, which should not be abandoned. regardless of other considerations, which we've discussed at length, keeping it permanent, this journey has a heritage worth preserving. It's the very worst kind of hypocrisy for the city to maintain any type of control over residences or business properties in this case for historical reasons, and then gut the historical center of the city itself. This is David Schroeder, retired psychiatrist in town.
Mr. Whalen, despite Mr.
I
Schroeder's
think
letter,
a hybrid promenade is the best solution for everyone.
despite his reading of Mr. Schroeder's opinion, during the last poll, the last survey that we took here, 89% voter approval on the promenade. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've got a good process undergoing right now. I think Mark Orgill and Sue Kemp are leading an effort to, there's 12 members of the public, I think, that are on the committee. Now we've got a group of local architects that are a subcommittee. Now they're looking at what's the best design overall. I think it can look a lot better than it currently looks. But, so many nights, I just live up here in North Laguna, I come down, and the only life downtown, the only place where anything's happening is promenade. And I think that's good. I think it's good to create an energy center, as Alan said, the town square. We need to preserve the trees down there, which I think we'll do, although my friend Ruben Flores is in the back, and I think he said 4 or 5 of them maybe can come out because they're subpar. But, we got to keep the trees. We got to come up with a nice design. A hybrid to me, it's like, that's the classic case of design by committee, right? You're trying to put an elephant and a seal together. Let's just try to do a very nice promenade, and I think we can figure out ways to open it up for deliveries for businesses, in the early morning hours, and take care of their needs that way. But no, I'd like to see the promenade be permanent and not be hybrid.
Okay, thank you. And before we go into final statements, I want to stay with the survey for just a moment, and something that you said earlier, Ms. Mancuso, that we're an artist community. Yet in the latest survey that we took, only 11% of respondents felt that affordable housing for artists was a priority. Are we an artist community, or aren't we?
I think we're venturing away, if not completely gone. But when you say the survey, which survey are we talking about? Is this of your Chamber of Commerce
No,
people?
this is the latest city survey.
The one, yeah. Well, I'm surprised that of the 89%, because I've been talking to so many people during the campaign, and I don't get 89% that want the permanent promenade. Not that it is on the road to happening, but I have not heard that, so that's interesting. So what was the question, though, coming back to me?
Well, coming back to you, earlier you stated that we're an artist community.
Oh, the artist
and
community.
In that same survey, only 11% of respondents considered affordable housing for artists a priority.
Well, we don't have affordable housing for seniors, we don't have it for artists, we don't have it for anyone. So if you're going to make, I'll go back to my answer about mixed use, right, and all the empty buildings. Retail is dying, and we need to change it up, and we need to make these buildings into housing. So, yes, we need housing for artists, obviously, and we need it for seniors to be able to stay here. People would love to have our service workers here as well. Maybe police, maybe everyone's children that are coming back from college that would like to live here. So we have a long ways to go, but as far as the artist community, a lot of galleries haven't made it. We're not prioritizing giving the arts money, we're giving it to tourism. So if we want to be an artist community, there's a big list of things we need to do to call ourselves that.
And what kind of things, Mr. Weiss, do we need to do, like she just mentioned? If only 11% of the respondents found that to be a priority, what kind of things could we do?
Yeah, I don't know the validity of that survey. I think we have to build affordable housing, we have to try, even though it's one of those mission impossibles because it's an infinite demand. So what we need to do is fund it, and we haven't done that properly. We need to either increase the TOT for the short-term lodging, or we need to find a different funding mechanism for it that brings us in a lot more money so that we can contribute at least half of the cost to a project for affordable housing, when we can, through the mechanisms of our housing trust, buy properties that hold in trust and keep those rents reasonable. So those are two, and I have a plan for that as well. I think we have to do it, even though it's hard to do.
Ms. Jones, does that make sense?
Yeah, I come from a long line of artists. My mom is an artist in town. She was on the board of the Festival of the Arts for many years. So there's no doubt that the arts are part of our lifeblood as a community. Is our community changing? Sure. It's changing, it's evolving. That doesn't mean that we can abandon the arts. We can't. And the best way we can support our arts community is by figuring out how to provide affordable housing for the arts community. I love the idea of this land trust because I think it allows there to be a mission-based component of this need. But it's not something that we can abandon. And we also can't focus solely on artists who already can afford to live here, right? Who are an important part of this community. But we need to be bringing in young artists, emerging artists, working artists as well. And the easiest way, let me take that back, the best way to do that is through affordable housing.
Mr. Whalen, she mentioned the land trust. Give us your thoughts, please.
Yeah, the Community Land Trust is in fact on a call today with Mark Orgill and the consultants that we've retained to put that together. And they exist around the country. They have them in Hawaii. They have them up in Seattle area, Montana, and a lot of different interesting places. So they can be successful. It's basically a nonprofit that gets established. It will have a community-based board, and then it'll look for opportunities to have people contribute either property or money into the Community Land Trust to assist with affordable housing throughout the community. I think that it's something we really need to promote and encourage. I do think with respect to artists, one thing that we could do, there's the more expensive projects, and there's a couple that this Community Land Trust will focus on right away out in the canyon trying to save because they're on the market now. Is ADUs, because ADUs would be kind of a perfect, work-live space for an artist, right? Beautiful studios. I mean, if we worked with people in the community to say, well, if you are willing to, rent your ADU to an artist at a reasonable rent, the city could subsidize some of that or provide some assistance, or we could, incentivize people who haven't built them yet. Say, well, cool. If you want to build an ADU and keep it affordable and rent it to, an artist, we'll kick in, some part of the construction cost, right, to incentivize you to build it. So I think that's something we can look at as well. So it won't be, as maybe Hallie said or George, but it won't be one thing that we do. But I think it is essential. I mean, we're almost 100 years old as a community. We've been defined as an art colony. We have to, and we still have good components of that, right? With the art museum and the playhouse and some of the festivals and so on. But we do have to work to keep the community vibrant, and that means artists living locally.
Thank all of you for a great discussion. It's now time for our closing statements, and we'll go alphabetically once again. Ms. Jones?
Just waiting to see if you change the alphabet. Thank you guys all so much for being here, and thank you to the Chamber, to you, Ed, to the Board of Realtors for putting this on. It's interesting, to have had these conversations throughout this campaign, and now as we near the end of this campaign, I think we're all very well versed on these topics. I think the conversation is robust and interesting, so thank you. I care about a lot of things in this community. But what I care most about in this campaign for City Council is being a part of collaborative decision-making and really solutions-oriented conversation and debate on the council dais. I think very frequently about the decisions that were made in 50 years ago that we're grateful for today. I have a poster on my kitchen wall of my mother actually silk screened it, and it was a Village Laguna's fight to put height limits in place on Pacific Coast Highway, right? And you think about those people who in the late 1970s decided that this was something they cared about for our community, and they fought to make it happen, and how grateful I am today for that, right? So these are the kinds of decisions we are going to be facing on the council dais, whether it has to do with affordable housing, whether it has to do with our changing business environment, whether it has to do with our changing climate, our marine protected areas, our 22,000 acres of open space, and the wildfire risk. So we're facing these incredibly complicated and nuanced issues, and we're making decisions every single day that are going to have ramifications 50 years down the road. Sometimes we're not even aware of what those ramifications will be. So there's no doubt to me that on the council dais, we need that collaborative decision making. We need that solutions-oriented debate and dialogue, and that is what I am most excited about potentially bringing to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Mancuso?
Well, this is, okay. Thank you for having this. It was very good. And thank everybody else who had us and talk about all the issues. As I stated, I was 20 years in the corporate world getting things, big solutions done and working collaboratively with many stakeholders. 8 years I was on a state board, and when I got on the board, it was the veterinary medical board. It was, oh my gosh, what's an animal rights person doing on the veterinary medical board, and how is she going to be able to work with the profession? And we worked with each other. We got really big things done. A lot of times they came to my side. Sometimes I went to theirs, and sometimes we stayed in our own corners. But and then I was reappointed another 4 years, and it became almost like a family, all of us. And we cared deeply about the profession, about consumers, about animals. So those 8 years gave me a lot of great experience. And then the last 5 years, I've been on the Environmental Sustainability Committee here in Laguna Beach. And again, getting things done that would have never been accomplished here because the council members would not have initiated them. So with my, 17 years now in politics at the Capitol, getting things done that people said could never happen, and getting 27 bills signed into law, and in New York, and even changing the way that we do business in China. So I have, this immense amount of experience that I want to bring to my little city and help and get some real things, some big things done here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mancuso. Mr. Weiss?
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for sponsoring this, first of all, and it's been a good discussion. I want to reiterate that I've been on the council for 3.5 years, and I'm not a cheerleader for the city. I'm an overseer of the city. I have to ask hard questions, which hasn't been done before, seemingly. We've been fawning over staff reports for years before I got here. And that's okay too, but our job is to make sure our money is well spent, and it hasn't been. We have a high level of employees. We hired 70 employees since 2015, and I don't think we've improved the service to our residents through that. Our technology level is still low. Our service levels are low based on what we spend. So I want to change that. And I'm here for residents because I want our money to be spent properly. I'm here for the environment as well. I sponsor the environmental cap. I want to see all of Laguna electrified to the extent possible. 85% of the goal of reducing our carbon footprint is through electrification. And we need to look at joining the OCPA. The mayor is going to have that conversation. We didn't have it in July. I wish we had. We have congestion of public safety to deal with. And I would love to get along. I do get along with Chief Calvert anyway, but I don't have a lot of confidence in his leadership. I haven't. And I'll say that to anybody who talks to me, because that's the way I am. And I'm very upfront about it. I'm not a confrontational person at all. And I do want the discussions to be had, but I don't want them to be one-sided. I've been a 4-1 vote for a long time, but that's the way it is because I've been excluded from participation in just about every subcommittee we have. For example, turned St. Catherine's property into a real community center. We bought it for $23 million. It's been sitting there, and the head of the fire folks are there. Once you put an emergency planning center there, I don't see how you get staff out of there. It shouldn't be a place for staff. My time is up?
Yes, sir.
You didn't give me any warning.
It was the BP.
So give me 10 seconds. So solving congestion, crime mapping is something we didn't do in the CAD software we bought. I said we got to have that. People have to know where crimes are being committed, and that's going to happen as a result of what I'm doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Whalen?
Yes, thank you all for being here. And, I think, it's been such a pleasure to work on council. I think we live in a great community, and I think we all want to make sure it continues to be great. I disagree with George. I think we've done a lot of good things for the community, and a lot of those positions that get added, why did they get added? We have more police officers than we've ever had right now. We've added brought the ambulance service in-house. I think that's terrific. We've tripled the number of ambulances we have in town. We've hired 8 park rangers. I think we need to hire more, but those are all new and providing great service. We all talked about that earlier tonight. So these are programs that make a difference, and these are things that the community wants, and we respond and we fund them because we're able to fund them, and we're still in good fiscal shape. We have a 20% reserve. The state only requires 10%. We have a $6 million emergency reserve on top of that. So we have a sound fiscal base, and we're still delivering great services to the community. And what I want to continue to work on, we spent $23 million since 2019 on wildfire safety. We've improved evacuation routes. We put helicopter refilling stations up top. We put cameras in the open space. This is stuff that's important to all of us, right? That without it, we're at risk. So we're spending your money well. We're spending it wisely. And then the last thing I'll say, because George mentioned a couple times, I completely have the opposite view from him on Chief Calvert. I think he's done a great job. We've got 58 positions authorized. He's got 58 filled, and then he's authorized to overhire for 2 more. California Highway Patrol, 800 vacancies. LA City Police, 1,000. They're down 1,000 officers. We're fully staffed here. He's doing a great job. Morale is better. He's created a SWAT team, joint SWAT team with Newport Beach to give the officers more opportunity. You talk to the police officers. They think it's going well. But I walk up and talk to them, and they say, yeah, things are good. Things are good. So anyway, I think he's to be commended for the effort that he's made and things that he's done. So I will look to, if I am fortunate enough to be reelected, I will look to continue to work on public safety. It's always been my number one. And we have much more to do. That's a job that's never done. I mean, you can continue to make improvements, but you just got to keep going on it. And, I'll continue to work on Laguna Canyon Road. I think that is a critical safety item for our town to get that right and get that done. And, it'll be a pleasure to work with the council. And I think, it's important, I guess the last thought is, I agree with George, it's important to be critical, and it's important to bring a critical eye to things. But it's also, important as an organization to kind of lift people up and give them some incentive, some motivation, and not constantly be questioning them or thinking that they maybe are doing something underhanded. So, I do boost our staff up. I think they do a very good job for us overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. I'd like to thank all 4 of you. As I started this tonight, I hold you all in the highest respect for even wanting the position, and the very best of luck to all of you. Hallie Jones, Judy Mancuso, George Weiss, Bob Whalen. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and the Laguna Beach Board of Realtors, and thank you to the audience. We really appreciate your Big hand for our candidates, please.
Who's over champagne?